Beneath the sink, the grease trap had clogged again. On my already stained apron, I wiped my damp hands, trying to ignore the dull ache spreading across my lower back 10 hours into my double shift at Rosario's. And just starting to trickle in was the night crowd. From behind the bar, Marco shouted, "Table 7 needs water," Ellie not bothering to look up from the cocktail he was mixing. Silently, I nodded, though no one was watching. Since I started working here 8 months ago, that's how it had been. Invisible until needed. The moment I stepped away, forgotten. But the tips were decent, and only 3 blocks from St. Catherine's Hospital was Rosario's, where I spent my mornings caring for my 6-year-old son, Leo. Leo, with his shock of dark curls and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, in the rare times he still could. Leo, whose leukemia had stubbornly resisted 2 rounds of chemo. Leo, whose specialist had called me into her office yesterday to explain with practiced sympathy that his particular genetic markers made him an exceptionally challenging case. With ice water, I filled a pitcher, the cold shocking my raw fingertips. When Dr. Mendez had suggested we explore comfort care options, beneath me, the floor had disappeared. For alternatives, for experimental treatments, for miracles, I'd begged her. Hesitantly, she'd said, "There's a trial at Johns Hopkins, but it's prohibitively expensive and the waiting list." Her silence completed the sentence. "Not for people like you." Back to the present, the crash of dishes in the kitchen jolted me. Mechanically, I arranged water glasses on my tray and headed for table 7. That's when the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted, like air pressure dropping before a storm. Her posture straightened, and mid-pour, Marco stopped. The front door had opened, revealing a cluster of men in dark suits despite the June heat. With practiced coordination, they moved, 2 scanning the room while a third spoke quietly to the hostess, who was nodding frantically, gesturing toward our finest corner booth. Quickly, I looked away, recognizing the choreography of power. Local politicians or business executives we occasionally served, all radiating self-importance, but this was different. With tension, the very air seemed to thicken. Only after seating the advanced team did the hostess scurry back to the entrance, nervously smoothing her hair. Then he walked in. Like his men had, he didn't survey the room or check his surroundings. He didn't need to. Around his imminent presence, the restaurant had already rearranged itself, like iron filings aligning to a magnet. Tall, with shoulders that strained against an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, he moved with unhurried confidence. Dark with threads of silver at the temples, his hair was swept back from a face that seemed carved from stone. All sharp angles and unforgiving planes, a face that had never needed to soften to get what it wanted. "Mr. Castellano," the hostess murmured, barely audible from where I stood. "Your table is ready." I forced myself to look away, continuing toward table 7. But as I served water to the middle-aged couple seated there, up my neck, I felt heat crawl. A primal awareness of being watched. When I turned, fixed on me were his eyes, dark as wet asphalt. Impossible to read was his expression. One of his men leaned in, whispering something in his ear, but his gaze never wavered. Vincenzo Castellano. I'd never seen him before, but everyone in East Harbor knew the name. Property developer, philanthropist, businessman, the public-facing descriptions that thinly veiled what everyone knew but never said aloud. For 3 generations, the Castellano family had controlled the city's underworld. As I passed the bar, Marco hissed, "Stop staring. That's not the kind of attention you want." I nodded, focusing intently on refilling my water pitcher, willing my hands not to shake. When I looked up again, Castellano had been seated, his back to the wall, giving him a clear view of both the entrance and the kitchen doors. At adjacent tables, 2 of his men sat, while another remained standing near the hostess station. For the next hour, I managed to avoid their section, which Teresa was handling with nervous efficiency. But as the dinner rush intensified, Marco caught my arm. "Teresa's got too many tables. Take this to Castellano's booth." Before I could object, he thrust a bottle of expensive Barolo and a single glass into my hands. Against my ribs, my heart hammered as I approached. Alone now was Castellano, his men having moved to create a perimeter of space around him. Up close, I noticed details I'd missed: a thin scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the heavy gold signet ring on his right hand, the faint scent of sandalwood and something sharper beneath it. "Your wine, sir," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. Immediately, he didn't respond, instead studying me with the dispassionate interest of someone appraising livestock. Then he gestured to the empty space across from him. "Pour yourself a glass." It wasn't a request. Helplessly, I glanced around, spotting Marco's wide-eyed warning look from across the room. "I'm working, sir, and I'm asking for your company." His voice was unexpectedly smooth, with just a hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Please." The please seemed added as an afterthought, a social nicety he'd learned but didn't particularly value. With trembling fingers, I set down the bottle and glass. "I'm sorry, but I can't." "Restaurant policy." Slightly, his mouth curved. Not quite a smile. "This restaurant occupies a building I own. I think we can make an exception." Before I could respond, in my apron pocket, my phone vibrated. The hospital's ringtone. Ice flooded my veins. This late, no one called unless something had gone wrong. "I need to take this," I blurted, backing away. "Excuse me." I didn't wait for his response, practically running toward the back hallway, fumbling with my phone. "Hello, this is Eleanor James." "Miss James, this is Nurse Patel from St. Catherine's. I'm calling about Leo." To the sound of her voice, the world narrowed, everything else fading to white noise. "He spiked a fever of 104, and his blood pressure is dropping. Dr. Mendez is with him now, but we need you to come immediately." "I'm on my way," I whispered, already untying my apron. Into the kitchen, I burst, searching frantically for Marco or the manager. "I have to go. Emergency with Leo." Marco appeared, taking in my panic with one glance. "Go. I'll cover for you." From my locker, I grabbed my bag, not bothering with my jacket, despite the thunderstorm that had started outside. As I raced through the dining room toward the exit, I nearly collided with a solid wall of fabric and muscle. One of Castellano's men. "Excuse me," I gasped, trying to sidestep him. He didn't move. "Mr. Castellano wasn't finished speaking with you." "My son is in the hospital," I said, desperation making my voice crack. I need to go to him now." The man's expression didn't change, but slightly he shifted, looking over my shoulder. I turned to find Castellano standing there, watching this exchange with inscrutable eyes. "Which hospital?" he asked. "St. Catherine's." "Please, I need to." With a slight gesture to his man, he cut me off, who immediately stepped aside. Then he reached into his suit jacket and withdrew a business card, pressing it into my palm. Against my clammy skin, his fingers were warm and dry. "For when you need help," he said simply, then turned to another of his men. "Anthony, take her. Make sure she arrives safely." Before I could protest, the large man, Anthony, was guiding me toward the exit, where a sleek black SUV with darkly tinted windows was already pulling up despite the no parking zone. With an umbrella, the driver emerged, sheltering us from the downpour as Anthony opened the rear door. "I can't," I started. "Faster than waiting for a bus in this weather, it is," Anthony said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "The boss doesn't like to be refused." Too desperate to argue further, I climbed in, clutching my bag to my chest. As the vehicle pulled smoothly into traffic, I finally looked at the card in my hand. It bore only a name and a phone number, embossed in simple black text on heavy cream stock. Against the windows, the rain lashed as we sped through the city, running yellow lights, the driver seemingly immune to traffic laws. I closed my eyes, picturing Leo's face, praying to a god I'd stopped believing in months ago. I didn't notice when the SUV stopped, only registering Anthony's voice. "We're here." I stumbled out, not waiting for the umbrella, letting the rain soak through my uniform as I ran toward the emergency entrance. Behind me, I heard Anthony call, "We'll wait." But already through the sliding doors I was, my world narrowing to fluorescent lights and the antiseptic smell of the hospital that had become more familiar to me than my own apartment. In the corridor, Nurse Patel met me, her face grim. "Dr. Mendez is with him now. They've moved him to intensive care." "What happened?" "He was stable this morning." Virtually non-existent is his immune system, Miss James. The infection moved fast. She guided me toward the elevator. Everything will be explained by Dr. Mendez. In the ICU, impossibly small looked Leo beneath the tangle of tubes and wires. Already pale from months of illness, his skin now had a grayish cast that made my heart stutter with terror. As I approached, Mendez looked up, her exhaustion evident in the slump of her shoulders. "Eleanor," she said softly. "On broad-spectrum antibiotics, we've got him, but his body isn't responding as well as we'd hoped." "What does that mean?" I whispered, already knowing the answer. "It means we're doing everything we can." The practiced phrase doctors use when they're running out of options. Into the chair beside his bed, I sank, taking his small hand in mine, careful not to disturb the four. Cold were his fingers, shallow his breathing. "The trial at Johns Hopkins," I said suddenly. "Could they? Even if we could get him in immediately, which we can't," Dr. Mendez shook her head. "He's too weak to transport right now. There must be something. Everything possible within our capabilities, we're trying," she said. The careful emphasis making it clear what remained unsaid. Beyond our financial reach existed the best treatments. Outside the glass walls of Leo's room, I could see Anthony standing in the hallway, his massive frame incongruous among the medical staff. Briefly, our eyes met before he looked away, speaking quietly into his phone. Back to Leo, I turned, stroking his forehead, whispering the stories he loved, even in his unconscious state. Steadily, the monitor beside him beeped, each tone a reminder that he was still fighting. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. Periodically, Dr. Mendez returned, making adjustments to his medication. Around dawn, Leo's fever finally broke and his oxygen levels stabilized, though he remained unconscious. "You should get some rest," Nurse Patel told me, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "There's a cot in the family room." I shook my head. "I'm staying here." She didn't argue, instead bringing me a blanket and a cup of bitter hospital coffee. As she left, I noticed Anthony was still in the hallway, though he'd changed position. Our unexpected sentinel. When the morning shift changed, Dr. Mendez returned with another doctor I didn't recognize, older with silver-rimmed glasses and a grave expression. "This is Dr. Klein," she explained. "He's the head of oncology." Tersely, Dr. Klein nodded. "I've reviewed Leo's case. Challenging are the genetic markers making his leukemia resistant to standard treatments." The way he said challenging made my stomach clench, medical terminology for hopeless. But he continued, surprising me. "With a colleague at Rosewood Private Hospital who specializes in precisely these variants, I've consulted. A combination therapy that isn't widely available yet is what Dr. Sharma has had success with." Painfully, hope flared. Could Leo qualify for that treatment? A look I couldn't interpret was exchanged by the doctors. Dr. Mendez cleared her throat. "Dr. Sharma has agreed to take Leo's case immediately, but Rosewood is private," I said slowly. "My insurance wouldn't." "The financial arrangements have been taken care of," Dr. Klein said briskly. "We're preparing to transfer Leo this afternoon." "I don't understand." Through the glass wall to where Anthony still stood, Dr. Mendez glanced. "The arrangements have been made by a private benefactor. All you need to do is sign the consent forms." Slowly, my gaze followed hers, comprehension dawning. The business card still tucked in my pocket suddenly felt like it was burning through the fabric. "Castellano," I whispered. Almost imperceptibly, Dr. Mendez nodded. "I don't know the details. I just know your son now has access to the best treatment available. Questions you don't want answers to, don't ask, Eleanor." As if summoned by his name, I saw Vincenzo Castellano himself appear at the end of the corridor, speaking quietly with Anthony. Even in the harsh hospital lighting, he radiated authority, his dark suit wrinkled despite the early hour. Through the glass, his eyes found mine, holding my gaze for a long moment before he turned and walked away, leaving me with the sudden, terrible understanding that whatever he had done for Leo, it would come with a price I couldn't begin to imagine. That same afternoon, Leo was transferred to Rosewood Private Hospital. Jarring was the contrast between St. Catherine's and Rosewood. From the understated luxury of the marble-floored lobby to the private suite with its soft lighting and tasteful artwork, the pediatric oncology wing looked more like a high-end hotel than a hospital, with none of the institutional grimness I'd grown accustomed to. In meticulous detail, Dr. Sharma, a petite woman with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense manner, walked me through Leo's treatment plan. The specialized combination therapy she proposed was cutting-edge, still in late-stage trials at only a handful of institutions worldwide. "Immediately, we'll begin," she said, reviewing his charts. "Critical are the first 48 hours. Before introducing the targeted therapies, we need to stabilize his immune response." I nodded, trying to absorb the technical information while stealing glances at Leo, who looked impossibly fragile against the pristine white sheets. His own room they'd given him, with a window overlooking a small garden, a child-sized bookshelf already stocked with picture books, and a pull-out sofa where I could sleep. "Miss James," Dr. Sharma said, reclaiming my attention. "Do you understand what I've explained? Aggressive is this treatment, and difficult days ahead there will be." "I understand," I said. "And the financial arrangements," she looked momentarily uncomfortable, "by hospital administration, that's been handled. Solely your son's treatment is my concern." After she left, I sat beside Leo, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. With quiet efficiency, the nurses here moved, checking his vitals and adjusting medications without the harried rush I'd grown accustomed to at St. Catherine's. Without checking the chart, each one knew his name. As if he were their only patient, each one treated him. As night fell, I curled up on the sofa beside his bed, too wired to sleep despite my exhaustion. Surreal felt the events of the past 24 hours. The restaurant, Castellano's penetrating gaze, the sudden transfer to Rosewood. Nothing made sense. Why would a man like Vincenzo Castellano intervene to save my son? From a waitress living paycheck to paycheck, what could he possibly want? Still in my pocket was the business card. I took it out, running my finger over the embossed letters of his name. An answer was here, but I was afraid to know what it was. My thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. I expected a nurse, but instead found Anthony filling the doorway, his broad shoulders nearly touching both sides of the frame. "With you, Mr. Castellano would like to speak," he said quietly, mindful of Leo sleeping nearby. In the family consultation room, his waiting. Anthony's expression gave nothing away. "With your son, I'll stay." The protective instinct to refuse, to stay by Leo's side, warred with the reality that I owed this man, this dangerous man, at least the courtesy of a conversation. And perhaps answers. "The nurses will be checking on him regularly," I said, rising reluctantly. Anthony nodded, taking my place on the sofa with surprising grace for a man his size. At the end of the hall was the consultation room, its door discreetly closed. Before I could lose my nerve, I hesitated before knocking softly, then entered. By the window, silhouetted against the city lights, stood Vincenzo Castellano. He'd removed his suit jacket, his white shirt crisp against the breadth of his shoulders. As I entered, he turned, and I was struck again by the intensity of his presence, how he seemed to compress the available oxygen in any space he occupied. "Miss James," he said, his voice low and measured. "Please sit." It wasn't a request. On the edge of one of the armchairs, I perched, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "How is your son?" he asked, remaining standing. "Stable," I replied. "The new treatment protocol, they've started." He nodded as if receiving a report he'd expected. "In her field, Dr. Sharma is the best. New patients she doesn't typically take, but exceptions can be made." The implication hung in the air between us. That nothing was beyond his reach. To his influence, no door was closed. "Why?" I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. "Why would you do this for us? You don't know me. You don't know Leo." For a long moment, Castellano studied me, his expression unreadable. Then he moved to sit in the chair opposite mine, close enough that I could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, smell the subtle scent of his cologne. "6 years ago," he began, his voice taking on a different cadence. "During childbirth, my wife Isabella died, a rare complication. Despite the best medical care money could buy, neither she nor our son survived. This unexpected vulnerability of confession stole my breath. I watched his face, searching for signs of manipulation, finding only a controlled pain so deep it made me flinch. Inadequately, "I'm sorry," I said. As if I hadn't spoken, he continued. "When Anthony told me about your situation, a single mother with a critically ill child, I was moved." The words seemed to cost him something to admit. For lack of resources that exist in the world, no child should suffer. Noble it sounded, altruistic even, but instinct told me there was more. "That's very generous, but..." "Investigated, I've had you, Eleanor," he interrupted. The casual use of my first name sent a chill down my spine. "During your pregnancy, Leo's father abandoned you. Throughout your degree program, you worked double shifts, graduated with honors despite every obstacle, only to put your career on hold when Leo became ill. Every step of the way, you fought for him. Through me burned the violation of having my life examined without my knowledge. You had no right. Who I was helping, I needed to understand." He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "Impressed me, your determination." Something in his tone made me look up sharply. Certainly, admiration was there, but something else too. A calculation, an assessment still in progress. "What from me do you want, Mr. Castellano?" I asked directly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Directness. Another quality I appreciate. He sat back, regarding me thoughtfully. "For now, nothing I want except for you to focus on your son's recovery. And later we can discuss how you might express your gratitude." He said it without menace, yet a tremor of apprehension passed through me. Nevertheless, he noticed, his eyes narrowing slightly. "A monster, I'm not, Eleanor. On desperate mothers or sick children, I don't prey." "Then what exactly do you do?" The question was dangerous, stepping over an invisible line into territory I shouldn't acknowledge. His expression hardened. "What's mine, I protect. In my world, order I keep. Your concern aren't the particulars." I should have been terrified, but exhaustion and worry for Leo had worn away my self-preservation. "If you're helping my son, it is my concern. What I'm agreeing to, I need to know." For a moment, I thought I'd gone too far. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. A glimpse of the man others feared. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. A short, genuine sound of surprise. "Then to question me, most people know better," he said, studying me with renewed interest. "Their child's life, most people aren't watching you save," I countered. With a slight incline of his head, he conceded the point. "Fair enough. But for now, all I ask is that you accept this help for what it is, a chance for Leo to receive treatment he deserves." Further I wanted to argue, to demand complete transparency about his motives, but exhaustion was overtaking me, clouding my judgment. And beneath it all was the undeniable fact that Leo was getting help he desperately needed. "To him, I should get back," I said finally. Castellano nodded, rising to his feet. "Outside your son's room tonight, Anthony will remain. If you need anything at all, tell him." The implication that we were now under his protection was both comforting and unsettling. "Thank you," I said. The words insufficient for saving my son, but necessary nonetheless. "Yet, don't thank me, Eleanor," he replied softly. "Only just begun, we have." The cryptic remark followed me back to Leo's room, where I found Anthony standing sentry in the hallway, his presence both reassuring and a reminder that we were now tethered to Vincenzo Castellano in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. In the strange, timeless rhythm of hospital life, days passed. The intensive treatment regimen Leo began, suffering through the harsh side effects with a courage that broke my heart anew. I barely left his side, sleeping on the pull-out sofa, showering in the attached bathroom, accepting the meals that appeared with reliable regularity. A constant presence outside Leo's door was Anthony, occasionally relieved by another of Castellano's men, though he clearly preferred to stay himself. By the third day, Leo had taken to calling him the Giant, earning a rare, fleeting smile from the stoic bodyguard. On the fifth day, while Leo was sleeping after a particularly difficult treatment session, I stepped into the hallway to stretch my legs. Anthony was there as always, though he'd ditched his suit jacket and loosened his tie in concession to the long hours. Home, does he ever let you go? I asked, nodding toward the chair where he'd spent countless hours. Where I'm needed, I go, he replied simply. And right now, he needs you to watch us, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Steadily, Anthony regarded me. To me, the boss doesn't explain his decisions, but for 15 years I've worked for him, and a personal interest like this before, I've never seen him take. Uncomfortably, the implications of that statement settled. How about Leo, did you know? I mean, at the restaurant, I never mentioned him. While you were at our table, the hospital called your phone, he said. After you left, curious was Mr. Castellano. Inquiries he had me make, and then decided to intervene. Just like that. His massive shoulders, Anthony shrugged. A complex man he is, but without purpose, he doesn't do anything. Before I could press further, the elevator at the end of the hall chimed, and Vincenzo Castellano himself stepped out. Unlike his previous visit, he wasn't in his usual impeccable suit. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a charcoal cashmere sweater that somehow made him look more approachable while diminishing none of his authority. In one hand, he carried a small gift bag. Immediately, Anthony straightened. They exchanged a brief nod before Castellano turned his attention to me. Eleanor, he greeted me, my name rolling off his tongue as if he'd been saying it for years. How is he today? Brutal is the treatment, I admitted, but promising is his initial response, Dr. Sharma says. Something like satisfaction crossed his features. Good. Him, may I see? The request surprised me. Right now, sleeping he is. Disturb him, I won't. For myself, I just want to see. I hesitated, then nodded, leading him into Leo's room. In silence, we stood, watching the steady rise and fall of my son's chest, the monitor beside him beeping reassuringly. Like you, he looks, Castellano observed quietly. In his face, the same determination, even in sleep. Startled by the perception, I glanced at him. Like his father, most people say he resembles. A shadow crossed Castellano's face. About him, tell me. Leo's father. Much to tell, there's not. Charming, irresponsible was Ryan. When I told him I was pregnant, ready to be a father he wasn't, he said. Since then, I haven't seen him. Contact you, he never tried. His son to see. I shook my head. Without someone who didn't want him, Leo's better off. Castellano's jaw tightened. A muscle working beneath the skin. Who abandons his child, a man, the right to call himself a father forfeits. The vehemence in his voice surprised me. This wasn't abstract morality. This was personal. On the bedside table, he set the gift bag. For when he wakes up. A model car kit it is, during recovery, something to keep his hands busy. The thoughtfulness of the gift, so specifically chosen for a young boy's interests rather than a generic stuffed animal, caught me off guard. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched. That very kind is. For kindness, I'm not known, Eleanor, he replied, a warning in his tone that I didn't fully understand. Then Leo stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. At the unfamiliar man beside his bed, he blinked in confusion. Hello, he said, his voice raspy from sleep and medication. Castellano's entire demeanor shifted, softening in a way I wouldn't have believed possible had I not witnessed it. Hello, Leo, he replied. Vincenzo is my name. A friend of your mother's, I am. With the frank curiosity of childhood, Leo studied him. The one who got me the special doctor, are you? A question in his eyes, Castellano glanced at me. Slightly, I nodded. In simple terms, I'd explained to Leo that someone had helped us access this treatment. Yes, he answered. The very best is Dr. Sharma. Solemnly, Leo nodded. When I take the yucky medicine, she says I'm brave. The bravest, Castellano agreed. For you, I brought something. He reached for the gift bag, placing it within Leo's reach. With careful fingers, Leo pulled out the box containing the model car kit. A vintage Ferrari rendered in exquisite detail, designed for older children, but perfect for Leo's meticulous nature. Cool, he exclaimed, his eyes lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Mom, look. Wonderful, it is," I said, blinking back unexpected tears at seeing a glimpse of my son's old enthusiasm. "When you're feeling stronger, how to put it together I can show you," Castellano offered. Then he looked to me. "If your mother approves." The casual assumption of future involvement sent a jolt of alarm through me, but eagerly, Leo was already nodding. "About cars, do you know?" he asked Castellano. "Quite a bit, I know," he replied with unexpected warmth. "Of my own, a collection I have. Real ones, not models." Leo's eyes widened. "Like a Ferrari?" "Several, in fact. Perhaps one day them you can see." The easy promise. The way Leo was looking at Castellano with growing admiration. It all felt dangerous in ways I couldn't articulate. This man was embedding himself in our lives with calculated precision. "Now, rest Leo needs," I said more sharply than I intended. "This afternoon, another treatment he has." If offended by the abrupt dismissal, Castellano was, he didn't show it. Instead, he nodded understandingly. "Of course. Another time." Then he straightened, the momentary gentleness receding behind his usual controlled facade. "Again soon, I'll check in. Should you need anything, Anthony will remain available." As he turned to leave, Leo called out, "For my car, thank you." In the doorway, Castellano paused, something unreadable crossing his features. "Welcome, you're very, Leo." Then his eyes met mine. "Your mother, take care of you. To be strong, she needs you." After he left, to his chest, Leo clutched the model kit, already examining the pieces through the clear plastic window of the box. "Nice, he is," Leo declared with the simple certainty of childhood. "And tall?" "Yes," I agreed cautiously. "He is." "Your friend, is he really?" The question gave me pause. What was Vincenzo Castellano to me? Benefactor, protector, something else entirely. "Complicated, it is, sweetheart," I said finally. With a nod, Leo accepted this, already absorbed in his new treasure. I watched him, torn between gratitude for the spark of joy Castellano had brought to my son's eyes and fear of the invisible threads now binding us to a man whose world operated by rules I didn't understand. 2 weeks into Leo's treatment, a fragile hope began to take root. Dr. Sharma's daily updates grew cautiously optimistic, speaking of promising cellular responses and encouraging blood work. Leo's coloring improved, his appetite returned in fits and starts, and he began asking when he could go home, a question that had been absent for months. "Remarkably well to the therapy, his body is responding," Dr. Sharma told me during our morning consultation. "If this trend continues, within a few weeks, transitioning to outpatient care we might discuss." I pressed my fingers to my lips, afraid to fully believe. "After everything else failed, is it really working?" She smiled, the expression warming her usually clinical demeanor. Precisely suited to his genetic profile was the combination therapy. Victory yet we are not declaring, but yes, Eleanor, it's working. After she left, I sank into the chair beside Leo's bed, watching him sleep peacefully for the first time in months. The constant knot of fear that had lived in my chest began to loosen just slightly. "Good news," came Anthony's deep voice from the doorway where he stood with his customary quiet vigilance. I nodded, wiping away tears I hadn't realized were falling. "To treatment, she says he's responding, that soon we might be able to go home." Something like satisfaction crossed his stoic features. "Pleased to hear it, the boss will be." Little of Vincenzo Castellano I'd seen over the past 2 weeks, though his presence remained a constant undercurrent in our lives. Every other day, fresh flowers appeared in Leo's room. Regularly, meals from high-end restaurants were delivered, replacing the standard hospital fare. Occasionally, new toys or books would arrive, each gift thoughtfully chosen to match Leo's interests, never extravagant enough to be ostentatious, but of undeniable quality. Only twice did Castellano himself visit brief, measured appearances where he spoke quietly with Leo about the progress of his model car, brought new books, or simply sat while Leo chatted about whatever was occupying his mind that day. With a gentle respect that continually surprised me, he treated my son, listening to Leo's ramblings as attentively as if he were receiving vital intelligence reports. With me, he maintained a careful distance, polite, concerned, but never crossing the invisible boundary I'd established. Yet, even in his absence, I felt his watchful presence. I noted how the hospital staff treated us with particular deference. How quickly any request was fulfilled. Tonight, his coming, Anthony informed me, interrupting my thoughts. In the private dining room on the top floor, if you would join him for dinner, he asked. My stomach tightened. Leo, I don't want to leave. With him, I'll stay, Anthony offered. His tone suggested this had already been arranged. From these four walls, a break you might need, the boss thought. The thought of leaving Leo, even briefly, made my chest constrict. Yet, part of me recognized the wisdom in it. I hadn't left the hospital in 2 weeks, had barely slept, surviving on adrenaline and hospital coffee. And beneath it all was the awareness that this invitation likely wasn't optional. What time? I asked finally. Some suitable clothes to be delivered, I've arranged. Anthony's gaze flickered briefly over my rumpled t-shirt and leggings. I bristled at the implication, but couldn't argue with the reality. I was hardly dressed for a dinner with a man who wore bespoke suits to hospital visits. Fine, I agreed reluctantly. But an hour, I'll only stay. And need me, Leo might wake up. Anthony nodded, though something in his expression suggested he found my conditions amusing. Him, I'll let know. True to his word, that afternoon a garment bag appeared, delivered by a discreet hospital attendant. Inside was a simple black dress, elegant but not ostentatious, and somehow exactly my size. Accompanying it were understated gold earrings and a pair of black heels. The entire ensemble spoke of restrained good taste, avoiding both the overtly sexy and the overly formal. I stared at the items, torn between indignation at the presumption and grudging appreciation for the thoughtfulness. There was no note, no indication of what Castellano expected from this dinner, just clothing that would allow me to feel somewhat presentable after weeks of hospital living. At 7:50, after kissing Leo's forehead and extracting Anthony's solemn promise to call me instantly if Leo so much as stirred, I made my way to the elevator. Perfectly, the dress fit, skimming my figure without clinging. I'd taken time to shower properly and applied minimal makeup from the small bag of toiletries I'd had Marco bring from my apartment weeks ago. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back seemed polished in a way I hadn't been since before Leo's diagnosis consumed my life. The private dining room occupied a corner of the top floor, offering panoramic views of the city lights. When I entered, Castellano was standing by the window, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He turned as the door closed behind me, his eyes tracking a slow path from my face down to my shoes and back again. Eleanor, he greeted me, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate in the air between us. Lovely, you look. For the clothes, thank you, I replied, clasping my hands to stop their trembling. Thoughtful it was. He gestured to the small table set for two beside the window. Please, sit. For something that wasn't delivered in a hospital container, you must be hungry. Elegantly set was the table with fine china and crystal, a bottle of wine already breathing beside two glasses. A waiter I hadn't noticed stepped forward to hold my chair, then poured wine into my glass before discreetly withdrawing. Of arranging the menu, I took the liberty, Castellano said, taking his seat across from me. Mind, I hope you don't. Under normal circumstances, I might have bristled at the high-handedness, but exhaustion had worn away my edges. And the truth was, after weeks of hospital food and takeout, the idea of a meal I didn't have to think about was appealing. Fine, I conceded, taking a small sip of the wine. It was rich and complex, probably costing more than I made in a day at Rosario's. How are you holding up? He asked, surprising me with the directness of the question. Managing, I answered carefully. To the treatment, Leo's responding well, Dr. Sharma says. I know. Daily reports, I receive. He stated this as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I meant, Eleanor. How are you coping? The unexpected focus on my well-being caught me off guard. Fine, Are you? His dark eyes were disconcertingly perceptive. In 2 weeks, you haven't left the hospital. You barely sleep. Weight you couldn't afford to lose, you've lost. For Leo, I need to be there, I said defensively. And for you, who's there? The question hung between us as the waiter returned, serving the first course, a delicate mushroom soup that sent a wave of hunger through me with its rich aroma. I didn't answer, focusing instead on the food, surprised by how ravenous I suddenly felt. In silence for several minutes, we ate, the quiet punctuated only by the clink of silverware against china. Why I've asked you here, you're wondering, Castellano said finally, setting down his spoon. I looked up, meeting his gaze directly. Among other things. A smile ghosted across his lips. Directness again. Refreshing. He leaned back as the waiter cleared our plates and served the main course, perfectly seared scallops on a bed of risotto. Once Leo is discharged, your situation I wanted to discuss. Instantly, my guard rose. What about it? In a building with questionable security and no elevator, your apartment is a fourth-floor walk-up. Continued outpatient care, careful monitoring, and during his recovery, a clean, controlled environment Leo will need. His tone was matter-of-fact, as if reciting items from a report, which I realized with a chill he probably was. Before, we've managed, I said stiffly. Different now, circumstances are. Careful follow-up care requires the treatment Leo is receiving. He took a sip of his wine, watching me over the rim of his glass. During his recovery period, for you both, more suitable accommodation I've arranged. The presumption stole my breath. You've what? Not far from here, a townhouse. 3 bedrooms, secure building, doorman, for Leo's outpatient appointments close to Rosewood, and to ensure his immune system isn't compromised, private enough. He spoke as if arranging people's lives was his natural right. Perhaps in his world it was. Mr. Castellano. Vincenzo, he corrected gently. After all we've been through, formalities I think we can dispense with. Vincenzo, I repeated, the name feeling strangely intimate on my tongue. While for Leo everything you've done I appreciate, and I do more than I can express, a house I can't accept. Why not? The question was genuinely curious, as if my refusal was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Because too much it is. Because to gifts like that, strings are attached, and what they are yet, I don't know. He set down his fork, giving me his full attention. From you, something I want, you think, don't you? His eyes darkened. What I want, what do you imagine, Eleanor? Sexual favors? Some sort of indentured servitude? The bluntness made me flush. What you want, I don't know. The problem, that's perhaps simple as what I want, he said, his voice dropping to a register that sent a shiver across my skin. Perhaps to ensure a child who has suffered needlessly the care he deserves receives, I want. Perhaps his mother to have the support she needs to focus on his recovery instead of worrying about rent or medical bills or climbing 4 flights of stairs with groceries while caring for a sick child, I want. Put like that, his offer sounded almost reasonable. Almost. And after Leo recovers, I pressed, what then? Something shifted in his expression. A momentary vulnerability quickly masked. With that bridge, let's concern ourselves when we reach it. The waiter reappeared to clear our plates and serve dessert, a delicate chocolate souffle that would have delighted me under different circumstances. Why me? I asked. The question that had haunted me for weeks, finally finding voice. Why Leo? In this city, hundreds of sick children there must be whose mothers work in your restaurants or clean your office buildings. Why us did you choose? For a long moment, Castellano was silent, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was different, rougher, with the faint accent I'd noticed before becoming more pronounced. My wife and son, when I lost, my future I lost, he said slowly. Everything I'd built, everything I'd fought for. Suddenly, no purpose it had, no inheritor. Reckless I became. Risks I shouldn't have taken, I took. Enemies I could have avoided, I made. He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. 3 years ago, in an attempt on my life, nearly killed I was. By centimeters, the bullet missed my heart. His hand moved unconsciously to his left side. While I was recovering, from Boston a specialist was brought in to perform a procedure that saved my life. That specialist was Leo's father. Like a physical blow, the revelation hit me. Ryan? But he's just an anesthesiologist. A gifted one, Castellano corrected. With a particular expertise in cardiac cases. Of the surgical team, he was part. My mind reeled, trying to reconcile the irresponsible man who'd abandoned me with someone skilled enough to be called in for such a critical procedure. His last name, I never knew, Castellano continued. His face, I never saw. Throughout, unconscious I was, but his first name and his distinctive voice I remembered when you took that call at Rosario's. When you say Leo the first heard, something connected. He looked down at his untouched dessert. Investigate, I had Anthony. Remarkable was the coincidence. So, this is what? Bitterness crept into my voice. To the man who helped save your life, repaying a debt. The man who to support his own son, couldn't be bothered. No, Castellano said sharply. With him, this has nothing to do. About you and Leo, this is. His eyes locked with mine, intense and unwavering. When for your child, fighting so desperately I saw you, when I realized I had the power to help and no one else would, like purpose it felt, like meaning. The raw honesty in his voice silenced me. For the first time, I glimpsed the man beneath the power and control. Someone who had lost everything that mattered and was grasping for redemption in the most unexpected places. So you see, he continued more softly, misplaced is your gratitude. If anything, you I should be thanking. For what? I whispered. That some things are worth saving, for reminding me. The simplicity of his answer caught me off guard. I looked away, overwhelmed by the complexity of emotions swirling between us, gratitude, suspicion, and something else I wasn't ready to examine. The townhouse, I said finally, returning to safer ground. Temporary it is, just for Leo's recovery. Yes, he agreed readily. Though once he's well, for you to leave, no rush there is. Suitable permanent housing, time to find you can take. The concession was reasonable, and the truth was our fourth-floor walk-up would be a nightmare during Leo's recovery. Pride warred with practicality as I considered his offer. Working, I'd need to continue, I said, testing boundaries. On you, dependent I can't become. Of course, though perhaps less physically demanding than waitressing, something. He reached into his jacket, withdrawing an envelope, which he placed on the table between us. An opening for a community liaison, the Castellano Foundation has. With flexible hours, health benefits, and a salary that should cover your needs comfortably, the position comes. At the envelope, I stared, suspicion flaring anew. A job now, you're offering me? An opportunity, I'm offering you, he corrected. One for which you're qualified. Before Leo's illness, given your background in social services, genuine good work, the foundation does, Eleanor. Of that, you could be part. The careful research into my past should have alarmed me more than it did. Instead, I found myself torn between weariness and a treacherous gratitude that he'd bothered to learn who I was beyond Leo's mother or the waitress. About it, think, he said, sensing my hesitation. To decide, no rush there is. I nodded, too emotionally exhausted to argue further. To Leo, I should get back. Castellano checked his watch. Of course, late it's getting. As we rose from the table, he moved to my side, his hand coming to rest lightly on the small of my back, a gesture both proprietary and oddly protective. I should have stepped away. Instead, I found myself leaning slightly into the warmth of his touch, starved for simple human contact after weeks of clinical interactions. For dinner, thank you, I said quietly as we reached the door. A welcome break, it was. His eyes softened as he looked down at me. Too much alone, you're carrying, Eleanor. Any more, you don't have to. The offer, implicit in his words, terrified me more than any overt demand could have, because part of me, the exhausted, frightened part that had been fighting alone for so long, wanted desperately to believe him. Good night, Vincenzo, I said, stepping back from the dangerous precipice of that thought. For a moment longer than necessary, his gaze held mine, something unresolved simmering beneath the surface. Good night, Eleanor. My best, give Leo. As I rode the elevator back to Leo's floor, I clutched the job offer envelope, turning Castellano's revelations over in my mind. The connection to Ryan, the near-death experience, the search for purpose, it created a narrative I could almost believe. Almost. Because beneath it all remained the inescapable fact: Vincenzo Castellano was a dangerous man who had carved out his empire through means I dared not contemplate. And now, for reasons still not entirely clear to me, he had drawn Leo and me into his orbit. The question was no longer whether there would be a price to pay. The question was whether I could afford not to pay it. A month later, Leo came home, not to our cramped apartment with its perpetually broken heating and noisy neighbors, but to the elegant townhouse Castellano had arranged. With the same efficient inevitability that seemed to characterize everything in Vincenzo's world, the transition happened. While Leo underwent his final inpatient treatments, a team appeared at our apartment, packing our belongings and transferring them to the new space. What had been a theoretical discussion became reality without my ever explicitly agreeing to it. Beautiful, but not ostentatious, was the townhouse. 3 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, a small garden terrace, all immaculately furnished in neutral tones. With particular care, Leo's room had been set up. The walls were painted a soft blue, his few toys and books arranged thoughtfully on custom shelves. A new desk stood beneath the window, topped with art supplies and a child-sized laptop for the educational programs Dr. Sharma had recommended during his recovery. "This is ours," Leo had asked in wonder when we first arrived, his eyes wide as he explored the space that dwarfed our previous apartment. "For now," I'd answered carefully, watching him run his fingers along the smooth wooden banister of the staircase. "While you get better." That had been 3 weeks ago. Now, as I sat at the kitchen island reviewing quarterly reports for the Castellano Foundation, a job I had accepted with reluctant pragmatism, I could hear Leo's laughter drifting down from upstairs where Anthony was helping him with his model car collection, which had grown considerably since that first Ferrari. Surprisingly smooth had been the transition. Steadily, Leo's health improved, his body responding to the innovative treatment protocol with a resilience that sometimes brought tears to my eyes. His hair was beginning to grow back, soft fuzz covering the scalp that had been bare for so long. His cheeks filled out, color returning to his once pallid skin. Consistently positive reports were brought by the weekly outpatient visits to Dr. Sharma. More complicated had been my own transition. Legitimate and engaging was the job at the foundation, involving community outreach programs that aligned with my education and values. Professional and welcoming were my colleagues, seemingly unaware of the unusual circumstances of my hiring. Primarily from the townhouse I worked, going into the main office only twice a week while Leo was at his tutoring sessions, another arrangement Castellano had made to help him catch up on the schooling he'd missed during his illness. A spectral presence in our lives remained Vincenzo himself, visible in the details of our new existence, but physically absent for weeks at a time. I would receive texts checking on Leo's progress, occasional deliveries of books or toys that somehow always matched exactly what Leo had been talking about wanting. A discreet presence outside the townhouse was maintained by security personnel, rotating shifts with military precision. A fixture in our daily routine had Anthony become, his stoic demeanor gradually softening around Leo until my son had declared him part of our family, a statement that had rendered the massive bodyguard momentarily speechless. But himself, Castellano kept his distance, as if recognizing that his physical presence disrupted the fragile normalcy we were building. I told myself this was a relief, that the complicated emotions he stirred in me were better left unexplored. Yet I found myself watching for him, attuned to any mention of his name, my pulse quickening whenever a black SUV pulled up outside. The sharp trill of my phone interrupted these thoughts. Glancing at the screen, I saw Dr. Sharma's number and felt the instinctive clench of anxiety that accompanied any call from Leo's medical team. "Dr. Sharma," I answered, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Is everything all right?" "Actually, excellent everything is," she replied, her typically reserved tone warmed by genuine pleasure. "Just received Leo's latest test results, and with you immediately, to share them I wanted." I gripped the edge of the countertop, scarcely daring to hope. "And complete remission, Eleanor. Entirely successful has the treatment been. In his system, no detectable cancer there is." Beneath me, the world tilted. "Remission," I repeated. the word foreign and miraculous on my tongue. Sure, you're? Absolutely certain. Of course, closely we'll continue monitoring him. And the full course of maintenance therapy he'll need to complete. But yes, your son has beaten this. Down my cheeks, tears spilled. Emotions too powerful for words surging through me. After 2 years of fighting, of watching my child suffer, of preparing myself for the worst, this moment felt unreal. Thank you, I managed finally. For everything. A remarkable child is Leo, Dr. Sharma said warmly. And a remarkable mother he has. To both of you, belongs this victory. She paused. As per his standing instructions, already I've notified Mr. Castellano. This news, to celebrate he'll want to, I imagine. Of course, she had. In Vincenzo's world, to him first information flowed, regardless of conventional protocols. After ending the call, I sat motionless, letting the magnitude of the news wash over me. Leo was going to live. The nightmare that had consumed our lives for 2 years was ending. The future I'd been afraid to imagine was suddenly possible again. I wanted to run upstairs and gather Leo in my arms, to tell him the monsters in his blood were gone. But I remained rooted to the spot, overwhelmed by a strange mixture of joy, disbelief, and a sudden crushing awareness of debt. Without Vincenzo's intervention, this moment would never have happened. The treatment that saved Leo's life would have remained out of reach, a possibility we could see but never grasp. The sound of the front door opening cut through my thoughts. Heavy footsteps crossed the foyer. And then Vincenzo was there, standing in the kitchen doorway. He'd clearly come directly from a business meeting, dressed in one of his impeccable suits. But there was an unusual urgency in his movements, a barely contained energy radiating from him. You heard, he said simply, his eyes searching my face. I nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in my throat. In 3 long strides, he crossed the kitchen and pulled me to my feet and into his arms. The embrace was unexpected, fierce in its intensity, his hand cradling the back of my head as he held me against his chest. I could feel his heart pounding through the fine fabric of his shirt, his breath warm against my hair. He did it, Vincenzo murmured, his voice rougher than I'd ever heard it. The little warrior one. The simple words broke something inside me. I sagged against him, sobs tearing free after months of careful control. He tightened his hold, supporting my weight effortlessly, one hand moving in soothing circles across my back. Over, it's, I gasped between sobs. Really over, it's. Yes, he agreed, his lips brushing my temple in what might have been a kiss. Now the healing begins. We stayed like that, locked together in a moment of shared triumph, until the sound of footsteps on the stairs broke the spell. I pulled back hastily, wiping at my eyes as Leo appeared in the doorway with Anthony hovering protectively behind him. Mom, why are you crying? Leo asked, alarm in his voice. Then he spotted Vincenzo and his face lit up. Vincenzo. To see my new Lamborghini model. Did you come? Vincenzo turned to him, his expression transforming with a smile I'd never seen before, open, unguarded, almost boyish in its genuine delight. I did, but for something even more important, I came. He crouched down to Leo's level, a position I'd never seen him take with anyone. Incredible news, your doctor just called with. Leo's eyes widened, darting between us. What news? The treatment worked, sweetheart, I said, moving to kneel beside him, taking his small hands in mine. The cancer is gone, Dr. Sharma says. Leo stared at me, processing this information with the serious focus he applied to everything. Gone. Like forever. We hope so, I said carefully. To make sure it stays away, you'll still need some medicine, but the worst part is over. I'm not sick anymore, he clarified, the concept seemingly too enormous to grasp. You beat it, Leo, Vincenzo said, his voice rich with pride. Most grown men I know, harder than you fought. And you won. A slow smile spread across Leo's face, then faltered. This mean does we have to leave here? To our old apartment, go back? The question caught me off guard. Before I could formulate a response, Vincenzo answered smoothly. Not unless you want to. For as long as you need it, this is your home. His eyes flicked to mine briefly. Both of you. Good, Leo declared with the absolute certainty of childhood. Because here, I like it, and having Anthony and you around, I like. He turned to me, adding with devastating innocence, here, Mom smiles more. At the observation, heat crawled up my neck. Vincenzo's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes, satisfaction, perhaps. A celebration, this calls for, he announced, rising to his feet. Leo, to mark this occasion, what would you like to do? Anything at all? Leo's face scrunched in concentration, the weight of such unlimited possibilities clearly overwhelming. Could we go see your real cars? He asked finally, looking up at Vincenzo with hopeful eyes. The ones about you told me. A genuine laugh escaped Vincenzo, a sound so rare I started at the richness of it. An excellent choice. How about Saturday? Of it, a day we can make. Come too, can Mom? Of course, Vincenzo replied, his gaze finding mine. If she wants to. The question hung between us, weighted with meanings beyond a simple outing. This would be the first time we'd left the controlled environments of the hospital and the townhouse together, a step into Vincenzo's world rather than the carefully neutral spaces he'd created for us. I'd love to, I heard myself say. The decision made before I'd fully considered its implications. With excitement, Leo whooped, and even Anthony's stoic expression softened into something approaching a smile. Then settled it is, Vincenzo said, his hand coming to rest briefly on my shoulder, the warmth of his touch seeping through the thin fabric of my blouse. Saturday, it is. Saturday dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect autumn day that seemed designed for new beginnings. At dawn, Leo was up, too excited to sleep, repeatedly changing his outfit until he settled on jeans and his favorite blue sweater, the one that matched his eyes. In them, you think he'll let me sit? He asked for the 10th time as I helped him tie his shoes. The Ferraris? Sure, he will, I replied, smoothing his wild curls. Just careful, remember. Expensive cars, these are. I know, Leo said solemnly. More than houses, some of them cost, Anthony told me. The thought made me slightly queasy. The world Vincenzo inhabited was so far removed from our reality, or what had been our reality before he entered our lives. Sometimes I felt like we were living in a beautiful bubble that could pop at any moment, sending us crashing back to earth. At precisely 10 a.m., a sleek black Bentley pulled up outside the townhouse. Anthony emerged from the passenger seat, opening the rear door as Vincenzo stepped out. More casually than I'd ever seen him, he was dressed dark jeans, a charcoal cashmere sweater, and a leather jacket that probably cost more than my old car. The outfit should have diminished his aura of authority. Instead, it simply transferred it from boardroom power to something more dangerous, more visceral. Down the steps, Leo flew, barely restrained by my hand on his shoulder. Ready, we're. Warm was Vincenzo's smile as he crouched to Leo's level. I can see that. And very handsome today, looking. Leo beamed at the compliment, then looked past Vincenzo to the Bentley. Of your special cars, is this one? Just a regular one, Vincenzo replied with mock seriousness. For us, waiting are the special ones. He straightened, his gaze finding mine, something approving in his expression as he took in my simple outfit of jeans, boots, and a soft cream sweater. Lovely, you look. The compliment, delivered with quiet sincerity, sent an unwelcome flutter through my stomach. Thank you. Where exactly are we going? My house in Westmore, he replied, guiding us toward the car with a light hand at the small of my back. About an hour outside the city, it is. The casual reference to what was undoubtedly just one of multiple properties should have reinforced the gulf between our worlds. Instead, I found myself curious about this glimpse into his private life, the spaces he inhabited when not orchestrating medical miracles or running his various enterprises. Pleasantly, the drive passed with Leo chattering excitedly from his position between us in the back seat. With patient detail, Vincenzo answered his endless questions about cars, revealing a depth of knowledge that went beyond mere collector's interest. With silent efficiency, Anthony drove, occasionally meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror with what might have been amusement at his boss's unusual animation. As we left the city behind, the landscape opened into rolling countryside dotted with estates set far back from the road. Eventually, We turned onto a private drive that wound through immaculate grounds for nearly half a mile before revealing our destination. Not what I'd expected was the house. Rather than the ostentatious mansion I'd imagined, it was a sprawling stone structure, elegant but somehow welcoming, with large windows overlooking manicured gardens and the forest beyond. It spoke of old money rather than new wealth, tasteful, secure in its own worth without needing to announce it. "Your house, this is," Leo breathed, pressing his face against the window. "One of them," Vincenzo replied, watching his reaction with evident pleasure. "But this is my favorite." As the car pulled to a stop in the circular driveway, I noticed the security, subtle but comprehensive. Cameras were discreetly positioned along the roofline. Men were stationed at strategic points around the property, their casual postures belied by their watchful eyes. A woman in her 60s emerged from the front door as we approached. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elegant knot, her expression warming at the sight of Vincenzo. "Mrs. Abelli," he greeted her, surprising me with the genuine affection in his voice. "On such short notice, for arranging everything, thank you." "Of course, Mr. Castelliano," she replied with a slight accent I couldn't place. Her gaze moved to Leo and me with open curiosity. "Your special guests, these must be." A hand on Leo's shoulder, Vincenzo placed. "Leo James, this is," and his mother, Eleanor. "Leo, Mrs. Abelli has been taking care of this house since before I was born." With the careful manners I'd taught him, Leo offered his hand. "Pleased to meet you, m." As she took his small hand in hers, Mrs. Abelli's expression softened. "Such a polite young man. And so handsome." She turned to me with a warm smile. "Welcome, Ms. James. You both, to meet, it's lovely." There was something in her manner, a subtle assessment beneath the welcome, that made me wonder what she knew about us, what Vincenzo had told her about our unusual relationship. "Ready whenever you are, lunch is," she continued, addressing Vincenzo. "In the garden room as you requested." "Perfect," he nodded. "But first, some cars to inspect, I believe we have." As Vincenzo led us around the side of the house toward a large outbuilding set apart from the main structure, Leo could barely contain his excitement. As we approached, he pressed his palm to a biometric scanner beside the door, which slid open silently to reveal what could only be described as an automotive shrine. Immaculate was the space, polished concrete floors, state-of-the-art lighting that highlighted each vehicle without glare, climate controls maintaining perfect temperature and humidity. And the cars. Even I, with my limited knowledge, could recognize the collection was extraordinary. "To my sanctuary, welcome," Vincenzo said quietly, watching Leo's face as his eyes grew wide with wonder. Perhaps 20 vehicles were arranged with artful precision. Ferraris in signature red, sleek Lamborghinis, classic Aston Martins, and others I couldn't name but knew instinctively were rare and valuable. Each gleamed under the specialized lighting, perfect and untouchable. "Can I?" Leo whispered, afraid to even ask. Vincenzo smiled, guiding him toward a particularly beautiful red Ferrari. "My first, this one was a 1962 250 GTO. Only 36 were ever made." He opened the driver's door. "Inside, would you like to sit?" First, Leo looked to me, seeking permission. When I nodded, with reverent care he approached the car, allowing Vincenzo to lift him into the driver's seat. "Like leather and magic, it smells," Leo declared, his hands hovering over the steering wheel without touching it. Vincenzo laughed, the sound echoing in the pristine space. "Exactly right, that's." He glanced at me, something vulnerable flashing across his face before disappearing behind his usual composed expression. To try, would you like to too?" I shook my head, content to watch them together, Leo's face alight with joy, Vincenzo's attention focused entirely on him, explaining each dial and switch with the patience of a born teacher. From car to car they moved, a pattern emerging as Leo asked careful questions and Vincenzo answered, occasionally lifting him to peek at an engine or demonstrate a particular feature. It struck me, watching them, how natural they looked together, the powerful man and the small boy, connected by a shared enthusiasm that transcended the circumstances of their meeting. There was genuine joy in Vincenzo's expressions, his usual guardedness falling away as he shared his passion with my son. "Mom, This one has doors that go up instead of out. Leo called, drawing me from my thoughts. I moved closer, admiring the sleek black Lamborghini he was gesturing toward. Beautiful, it is. Very special, this one is, Vincenzo said, his voice taking on a different quality. My father's favorite it was. The only thing of his I chose to keep. The simple statement revealed more about his relationship with his father than any detailed explanation could have. I met his eyes, acknowledging the confidence without pressing for more. It suits, I said quietly. Something shifted in his expression, a softening around the eyes, a slight curve of his mouth that wasn't quite a smile but carried more warmth than any smile I'd seen from him before. The moment stretched between us, heavy with unspoken things, until Leo's excited voice broke the spell. Can we drive? Just a little. Vincenzo turned to him, the tension dissipating. Not today, little man. But when you're a bit older, perhaps around the track we can take one. A track, there is. Leo gasped. Behind the house, Vincenzo confirmed. Where properly I can drive them without worrying about speed limits. The casual reference to disregarding laws should have troubled me more than it did. Instead, I found myself smiling at Leo's expression of pure awe. Time for lunch, I think it is, Vincenzo said, checking his watch. Where we are, Mrs. Abelli will be wondering. He looked down at Leo. And afterward, if you're interested, for you a surprise there is. Another one? Leo asked, eyes wide. Already the best day ever, this is. As we walked back toward the house, Leo skipping ahead with Anthony following at a discreet distance, Vincenzo fell into step beside me. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? With him today, for trusting me. Easy for you it wasn't, I know. The simple acknowledgement of my reservations caught me off guard. Happy, I said finally. What matters, that's. Briefly, Vincenzo's hand brushed mine, the contact sending an electric current up my arm. And you? Happy, are you, Eleanor? The question was deceptively simple, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. I looked ahead at Leo, his face tilted up to the autumn sun, his step lighter than I'd seen in years. Getting there, I answered honestly. Vincenzo nodded, accepting this partial truth without pressing for more. A start, that's. The surprise turned out to be a miniature electric Ferrari, scaled perfectly for a child Leo's size. Painted the same vibrant red as its full-sized counterpart in Vincenzo's collection, it waited for us on a smooth paved area behind the house that served as a small practice track. Leo's face when he saw it was something I'll never forget, pure, undiluted joy breaking across his features like sunrise. He turned to Vincenzo, speechless for perhaps the first time in his life. For me, is that, he finally managed. Vincenzo nodded, his expression softening in that way it only did around Leo. Your victory, to celebrate. A chariot, every warrior deserves. At Vincenzo, Leo launched himself, wrapping his arms around his legs in a fierce hug. For a moment, Vincenzo seemed startled by the physical affection, his body stiffening before he relaxed and placed a gentle hand on Leo's head. Thank you, Leo whispered, his face pressed against Vincenzo's leg. Something shifted in Vincenzo's expression, a complexity of emotion I couldn't fully decode. Vulnerability and determination intertwined. Over Leo's head, his eyes met mine, seeking something, permission, perhaps, or understanding. Slightly, I nodded, acknowledging what was happening between us, this strange family we were becoming against all odds and reason. The smile that curved his lips in response was unlike any I'd seen from him before, unguarded, almost tender. In a blur of happiness, the rest of the day passed. Countless times, Leo circled his track in his miniature Ferrari, his laughter carrying across the grounds. In the garden room, a sun-drenched space overlooking meticulously tended flower beds, we ate lunch. A feast that catered perfectly to Leo's preferences while still offering sophisticated options for the adults had been prepared by Mrs. Abelli. Later, as the autumn afternoon began to fade, we explored the grounds. Leo raced ahead to discover a koi pond, a small orchard, a greenhouse filled with exotic plants. Beside me, Vincenzo walked, his usual intensity softened into something more contemplative. Here, something beautiful you've built, I observed as we paused by the pond, watching Leo carefully feeding the fish with pellets Miss Isabelli had provided. Isabella's vision, it was, he replied quietly. The gardens, the greenhouse, those were hers. After she died, the place I nearly sold. Too many ghosts. His gaze traveled across the grounds. But then all I had left of her, it was, I realized. The rare personal disclosure hung in the air between us. Remarkable, she must have been. She was. A shadow crossed his face. Of who I was, innocent she was. What I did. From her, that world I kept away. Sometimes my greatest kindness and my worst deception, that was I think. The implicit parallel to our own situation wasn't lost on me. With us, is that what you're doing? Separate, keeping worlds. His eyes when they met mine were startlingly honest. I've tried, but to me, less clear those boundaries are becoming. The admission sent a complicated ripple of emotions through me, apprehension, yes, but also a treacherous thrill of anticipation. Vincenzo, I began, not sure what I intended to say. Mom. Leo called, breaking the moment. The big fish, look. Golden white, it is. The interruption was perhaps a mercy, forestalling a conversation neither of us was quite ready to have. Briefly, Vincenzo's hand brushed mine, a silent acknowledgement of what remained unspoken, before we joined Leo at the pond's edge. As twilight approached, Leo's energy finally began to flag, the excitement of the day catching up with his still recovering body. In the car heading back to the city, he fell asleep between us, his head eventually coming to rest against Vincenzo's arm. A perfect day, he's had, I said softly, watching my son's peaceful face. For that, thank you. Down at Leo, Vincenzo looked, something fiercely protective in his gaze. Many more perfect days, he deserves. His eyes lifted to mine. Both do, you. The intensity in his voice made my heart stutter. Vincenzo, Not yet, he interrupted gently. Not with him between us. When we're alone, this conversation needs to happen. The acknowledgement that there was indeed a conversation to be had, that the undercurrents between us were real and not simply my imagination, sent heat coursing through me. In comfortable silence, the remainder of the drive passed. When we reached the townhouse, with careful strength Vincenzo lifted the sleeping Leo from the car, carrying him inside and up to his bedroom as if he weighed nothing. I followed, watching as he laid my son on his bed with a gentleness that belied his dangerous reputation. Will you stay? I asked as we descended the stairs. For a drink? The question was weighted with possibilities, and we both knew it. Yes, he answered simply. In the kitchen, I poured us each a glass of the expensive whiskey he'd stocked in the bar cabinet. With a nod of thanks, he took his fingers brushing mine deliberately during the exchange. My life, you've changed, I said finally, meeting his gaze across the kitchen island. Leo's life. With who you are, what you do, how to reconcile that I don't know. And who do you think I am, exactly? He asked, his voice carefully neutral. A steadying breath I took. A man with power. Dangerous power. From legitimate business alone, the kind that doesn't come. From the implied accusation, he didn't flinch. Yes. The simple admission hung between us. Of you, afraid I should be, I continued. Perhaps. His eyes never left mine. Are you? No, I admitted. And that terrifies me more than you do. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Of me, you've never been afraid, Eleanor. Not even that first night at Rosario's. To me, one of the things that drew you, it's what this is that? I asked. To me, you being drawn? Or about Leo it is? The family you lost, about replacing? The bluntness of my question might have angered another man. Vincenzo merely considered it with the seriousness it deserved. With Leo it began, he acknowledged, with seeing in him the son I never had the chance to know. He set down his glass, moving around the island until he stood before me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. But something else entirely, it's become. His hand rose to cup my cheek, the touch surprisingly gentle for a man I knew could be ruthless. In my life, you both I want, Eleanor. Not as replacements for what I've lost, but as something new. something I never expected to find. The honesty in his voice undid me. Into his touch, I leaned, allowing myself to acknowledge the attraction that had been building between us for months. Dangerous, your world is, I whispered, a final protest against what felt inevitable. Yes, he agreed, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. But in it, the most protected people will be you and Leo. Nothing will touch you. No one will dare. The promise should have disturbed me, the casual reference to his power, the implication of violence that protected it. Instead, I felt a shameful sense of security, of finally having found shelter after years of fighting alone. A possession, I can't just be, I said, needing to establish this boundary. Another thing you own and protect. Never that, he replied fiercely. You challenge me, Eleanor. You question me. Not just what I want people to see, you see me. In my world, how rare that is, do you know? His other hand found my waist, drawing me closer. Your submission, I don't want. Your partnership, I want. The word hung between us, loaded with meaning beyond the present moment. A future I hadn't allowed myself to imagine. You, Leo loves, I said softly, acknowledging what had become increasingly obvious. And him, I love, Vincenzo replied without hesitation. To protect him, to protect you both, I would die. The declaration, delivered with such certainty, broke the last of my resistance. To his face, I raised my hand, feeling the slight roughness of evening stubble beneath my palm. Your redemption project, I don't want to be, I whispered. Whatever sins you carry, your chance to atone for. You're not, he assured me. If you'll have me, you're my future. When his lips finally met mine, it felt like an inevitability, as if all the paths of our lives had been leading to this moment. The kiss was gentle at first, a question more than a demand. When I responded, his control slipped, the passion he typically kept leashed breaking free as he pulled me against him, one hand tangling in my hair. We broke apart, breathless, foreheads resting against each other. The vulnerability in his eyes was something I suspected few had ever witnessed. Stay, I whispered. His answer was another kiss, this one a promise of all that would follow. The joining of our separate lives into something neither of us had imagined finding. A family forged from the most unlikely circumstances. In the morning, Leo found us together in the kitchen, Vincenzo making coffee while I prepared breakfast. He paused in the doorway, taking in the domesticity of the scene, something wise beyond his years in his expression. My dad now, are you going to be? He asked Vincenzo directly. The coffee pot, Vincenzo set down, crouching to Leo's level as he always did when they spoke. I would be honored, he said simply. But only if that's what you want. With characteristic seriousness, Leo considered this. I think it is, he decided. But something, you have to promise. Anything, Vincenzo replied. And I knew he meant it. Like my first dad did, promise you'll never leave us. Over Leo's head, Vincenzo's eyes met mine. A lifetime of commitment in his gaze. I promise, he told Leo. My family now, you and your mother are, and what's mine, I protect. As Leo launched himself into Vincenzo's arms, I watched the man who had saved my son's life, this dangerous, complex man who had somehow become essential to us both, embrace our future with the same determination he approached everything else. Some might call it Stockholm Syndrome, this strange love that had grown between us. Others might say I'd made a deal with the devil. But watching them together, seeing the genuine love Vincenzo had for my son and the healing his presence had brought us both, I knew the truth was both simpler and more complicated. In the end, we had saved each other.